Hey guys, sorry I'm a day late. For some reason I thought today was Thursday. Anyway, so today's lesson is going to be number 9, and we are going to do the spirograph and the quilt block wizard. So we're going to go ahead and open our software. Just double click on your icon and double click on embroidery. Once this opens up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose Spiro. Oops, I need to update my software. I'm going to choose Spiro. Okay, so when you choose Spiro, this little wizard pulls up. You can make it bigger by grabbing the sides. So I'm going to make mine bigger so that you can see it. All right. Okay, so here is the Spiro Wizard, and at the top you get to determine the size of the Spiro you want to make. You can choose random, and when you click on that, it says it'll lose any changes. You're going to say okay, and a new Spiro shows up. That's weird. I almost created this exact same one today. Anyway, you can do it again and again. And if you just keep hitting random over and over again, it will change. And once you hit reset, it will turn it back to that original one. So we're going to change our size to 200. And that's going to make it 200 when we insert it. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to do it at 200. I forgot we're going to add this to our other thing. We're going to do it at 100. We're going to keep it as 100. Sorry, guys. Okay. Over here is what color it is. So currently we are on this crimson color, and if you double click on it, oh, here. If you click on this, I swear I've done this before, you can change the color. So we're going to go ahead and change it to red. Okay, so now it's red. All right, so we've gone across the top. This shows you what color you're on currently. We go down here, and we now have up and down. This will move the colors up and down. We'll get to this when we add a color. This is, you add a color. Once you've got your first one the way you want it, you can add a second one. Design player shows how you're going to how it plays out or stitches out. Ghost mode. So if you have more than one color, you can do ghost mode. This also shows you your stitch count. So right now it's 611 stitches. It's 100 millimeters across and 100 millimeters up and down, and I have one color. If you choose on stitch options, you get a choice of running stitch, double stitch, and triple stitch, and you can choose your stitch length and maximum gap to trim, which means that it's going to, anything that's under 2 millimeters, it's not going to have a trim in there. Okay, say okay. Now, there is a way to actually make this a motif stitch, and that's in the stitch editor or the modify module. I will kind of glance over that in today's lesson. Okay, let's go over here. So this is percent of size. So if you go down, it only goes down to 10. So that is 10% of the 100 millimeters. So we're going to move that back up to 100. This is the number of petals. These are what are considered petals. Right now we're at 12. That would be 10, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is a weird shape. And then you can also go really high too. Okay. This is the petal type. So as you move this, it changes the different petal type. This is the curvature. So out and in, basically. I'll go how much it curves, and so you can get a totally different look. And then this is the angle, so you can turn it. This comes in handy when you have multiples. This is how many different lines So if you notice, there comes now 3 lines. So there's going to be 3 stitch lines versus 1 stitch line. And then you can space them so that they're basically sitting on top of each other, or they're further apart. I personally think that the negative number should be further apart and the positive number should be, or the negative number should be on top, but it is what it is. So just kind of mess with that. And then you can adjust the angle of those different stitches. So you can get some really cool different looks. We're going to stick with that one. Okay. So basically this is one of those things kind of like the word sculpt where you're going to sit down and you're going to play with it. You're going to mess with the petals. You're going to mess with the what is that, curvature. I always want to call it circumference. I think it's because it's like a radius symbol. I think that's like the radius symbol. Anyway, so well, now once you have your first one done, you can add a color. So we're going to come in here and we're going to add orange and say okay. Okay, so now the orange seems to have taken over the red, but it doesn't. It actually is just on top of it. So we're going to change this. And then let's do, there's a way to bring it in. I guess not on this one. Some of them you can make like really tiny on the center. This one doesn't seem to be one of them. Anyway, so you can just keep playing with it until you're happy with its look. And I want it. Okay. And then if you wanted to adjust the angle, and then on this one, so let's go with that. Okay, and see how it's in ghost mode right now? So whatever your first color is, it's going to ghost. So if I add another color, so let's come in here and add a yellow, and say okay, it's now going to ghost the orange. So let's go with the petals and let's move it like that. So now you can see that the orange is now hidden as well. So let's see. And then let's see. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to pull this out. Okay. So then we could make this one smaller. So we could come in here and we could be like, you know what, we're going to make this one smaller. So you could shrink the size. So let's shrink this one down to 83. And we'll come in here and we'll shrink this one down to 93. And then 100. Okay, so now we're back at yellow. We're going to drop that down to 1 thread. And we'll move this back. Okay, so we're going to unghost now so we can kind of see our creation. So once you have multiple colors, you do get to now change them. You could delete a color, you can add a color, you can also move up a color. So if we wanted yellow to stitch out first, then orange, then red, we could simply do that. And then you could also just do it back. So you can move those using the up and down keys. Okay. That's pretty much Spirograph, or Spiro. It's really simple, and you can just spend all kinds of time sitting here doing it. You can get totally different looks. Let's add one more color. Let's do a green. And we're going to put, I'm going to go 100, and this time we're going to go So you can get really creative. So we're going to put a border, and this we're going to make stitch first. So that all stitches on top of it. Okay, so once you're happy with the way it looks, you can go ahead and just say okay, and that's going to put it into your hoop. So now we have our Spiro on our in our hoop, and we could then, if we were done and that's all we wanted to do, we could simply go File and export it. So it's pretty simple, and like I said, it's pretty much something you want to just sit down and play with so that you can just have as much fun as you want. I've seen people where they do like this in a quilt block and they've made the Spiro and then they'll put corner pieces. That was pretty cool. But what we're going to do is we're going to use ours in the Quilt Block Wizard. So what we're going to do is once it's selected, we're going to click cut. Click cut. That's going to put it down on our clipboard. We're going to click on our Create tab and we're going to go to our Quilt Block. All right. So the first one we're going to do is the very top choice. So here's our wizard block pop-up, and it says Filled Quilt Block Inner Embroidery. What that means is you're going to have an embroidery in the center of it, and they're going to have quilting around it. So we're going to hit Next. We're going to do a square. A lot of times I will do rectangle, and square are the ones I use most often, but we're going to go ahead and do square, and I am going to leave it at that 200 millimeter. Cut line. Include a cut line around my quilt block. And then you can do your options, and this is the margin. So I'm going to lower the margin and see if I can't get it to pop up on the screen. Let's do 5. No, it doesn't show you. Okay, so what the quilt or the cut line is here's our main box. This is our 200 by 200. The cut line is outside of the 200 by 200, and it gives it so that you could actually cut it out with a pair of scissors or whatever. I do not do this option. You have to, if you want a 200 block and you want to add that cut line, that means that you have to do a hoop that's bigger than that 200 millimeters. So you would, the only one you could go up to would be like something like the 260. So I never do that. I just stitch it out and then I just cut my own borders with a rotary cutter and a ruler. Super easy, so I don't worry about that. So hit Next. There is our embroidery. So we're going to do paste, and there it is. And we're going to hit Next. Okay, so here is our quilt block, and this is the center. So angle. This is the angle of the design. Obviously, this is a spirograph, so the angle doesn't matter a whole bunch. You can't really tell, but if it was something else, you might want to change the angle. This is mirror, so if you wanted to do a cute like puppy dog quilt or something, and you wanted one puppy dog one way and one puppy dog the other way, you could do it this way. The outline margin, that's this right here, this line right here. That is your outline margin. That is going to be how close the quilting comes to the inner embroidery. So you can move that down all the way to 0. Unless you're doing stippling, that line will stitch. So a lot of times I don't want that. So I would increase it. I do 5 millimeters a lot. I really like that one. The other thing you can do is you could move it. If you were doing this and you wanted like all of these in the center and that's what you wanted, you could do it like that. Or you can simply put it in the center. There is nothing that really tells you to center it or anything. So once you move it, you kind of are stuck. Now you have to eyeball it. So that's what's all on this page. I'm going to go ahead and say Next. And here's where the creativity comes in. These are all the different options you have to do with the fill of your quilt block. So the first one up, of course, is stipple. This is the one that does not put that line around it. So if you wanted something really close, stipple would be the way to go. You choose options and you can do curve. You can change your gap. So I'm going to put 15. And you can choose just running stitch or a triple stitch and the length of stitch. And then we saw curve, so we're going to go ahead and do straight and say okay. And that's going to give you a different look. So that's a pretty wide. Let's change this back to 5 so you can show the difference. Say okay. And that's that. It kind of looks pretty cool. If you're doing like a Moroccan or theme or Aztec or Egyptian, that might be kind of cool to have that. I like it. So that's for stippling. Each one of these has its own options. So the next one would be channel and parallel. This one would put just lines. And when you go into options, again, you can change that gap to stretch them out. You can change it to diamond. You can change it to square, parallel, enter angles. So you can choose your own angles. You could choose the angle of the parallel or the angle of the diamond. So, you know, you really have tons and tons of options. Again, you have running stitch, double zigzag. I'm going to show you this just because I would never personally do it, but because it's here, I'm going to. So if you choose double zigzag, you can choose your zigzag width. I'm going to change it so you can see it. And that puts like this weird like zigzag on it. It's kind of cool. Not something I generally do. But if you choose something else, though, everything you've done goes away. So you would have to click on options again, change the gap. We'll do triple stitch this time. And we're going to leave it at parallel and say okay. And then it's going to come back up. Diamond, square, and crosshatch. Same thing. You get to do it. You can change the angles. So the gap on this one, let's do 15 again. And the only reason I'm doing 15 is because I just have to add one. Curve in, curve out. One thing I don't like about this is you don't get to choose apply so that you can't see it before you do it. So curve in, we're going to go to 75. Lines 2, we're going to go to negative 75. Again, you can do your angles. We'll do double stitch on this one, and then you say okay when your choices are made. And you can see how it alters. Motif stitch. Motif is just that. It fills it with a motif stitch. Again, you can choose options. We're going to go with Husqvarna, and let's just do decorative stitches, and let's go pick out, let's do this heart. You can increase the size on some of them, others you cannot. So that would be the first one. You can reverse it. So like if it was an animal of some sort, you could reverse it so that it goes the other way. Motif 2, you can add a second one. So we could go in here and that was in decorative stitches and we did the heart. So let's do this. Okay. And then again, some let you change it, some don't. Spacing, you can center them. You can also change their the distance apart. So we're going to go 50 and 50 because right now, if you look, they're really close together. And offset, I'm going to do 50. That's going to center them. And options, this you could change the angle if you wanted to. Triple stitch, you can do running stitch. Again, same kind of concept. Say okay. And there would be what would become quilted on your quilt. So that one is a lot of fun. I use that one a lot in doing things that I do. I generally, I think it's fun. So I do a lot of the different motifs. So echo, it takes whatever your center is and it echoes it out. Again, with options, this time you can do your gap. I'm going to leave it at 5. I'm not sure why these are grayed out. I don't know if we lowered it. No. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's all grayed out. But these are the edges, the corners. So number 1 was selected. I don't think they look really rounded, but we'll say okay. And it just stayed the same. 2. So, okay, again, looks exactly the same. And 3, again, the same. Did that change? No, it still didn't let you do that. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, those are basically the changes you can do. Contour, Does the same thing kind of as Echo does. If you change the gap, let's change the gap to 12 and say, okay. Kind of does the same thing as Echo, only in reverse, I guess you would say. Shape's kind of cool. Again, you can come in here and choose your shape. There's tons of shapes, so we'll choose the circle. We're going to lower that density, or no, that's higher. We're going to lower the density. Let's see, I think you can go up to 50, I think. Yeah. Oh, no, 40. 40, and say okay. And then that's just going to give that shape. Let's change the shape to something. And then you can kind of see the triangle in there. It gives you a different shape. Shape with motif, same concept, only this time it's going to do that with a motif fill. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do Echo. And I really wish... Oh, I think this is if you don't have an inner embroidery. We'll have to try that in a minute. Okay, so there we go. So we have our design and our stitching, and we just say finish. And there it is. I'm going to change my hoop really quick. I thought I had the 200 by 200 on there. Okay, so there would be our quilt block that we created. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. We're going to go back to our Create tab and go to the Quilt Block Wizard. The next one in there is the Outline Quilt Block Fill with Inner Shape. So what that basically means is you get to pick out a shape and it's going to fill it with a quilting pattern. So we're going to say Next. We're going to leave that 200 by 200. Here's our shape. We're going to choose the moon. I like the moon. The moon's cool. So we're going to do the moon. We're going to leave the size. If you want to make it bigger, we can make it bigger. Let's do 150. So there's our hoop moon. Say Next. So here it is with the stipple fill. Let's see this Echo if we get, oh, yep. So there's the Echo on the moon. We still do not get to choose any of those. We're going to come back each time. So that's, but I really liked, we're going to do the motif. I don't know how to say that. It has stars. I really like that. But we're going to make our stars bigger. So this is one that lets you make them bigger. So we're going to move them up to 12. Oops. And because I'm proportional, I can move either one. 12. And then spacing, I'm going to do 50, 50, and 50. Say okay. And there's my stars. So I think that's really cute. I like that. So I'm going to say finish. Okay, so let's say that you want this. You want just the moon, and then you want some other quilting around it. What you can do is you can click on the Modify tab. You can choose Box Select. We're going to come in here and we're going to grab this. And we're going to say Cut. That's going to put it on there. There's that one stitch left all around the outside, which it always does, but we are going to select all visible, and I'm going to delete that because I don't want that. Then I'm going to go back to the Create tab. I'm going to do Quilt Block. I'm going to choose that filled inner embroidery again and say Next. I'm going to have my size. I'm going to say Paste. I'm going to say Next. There's my moon with its quilting already in there. Next. And then I'm going to, on the outside, I'm going to add diamonds, and I'm going to give their gap 10. Say okay. And say finish. Okay, so now I have double quilting. I have the quilting on the inside of my shape, and I have quilting on the outside of my shape. Again, this is just showing you kind of how you can do different things. So we're going to go ahead and delete that one. We're going to go back to Quilt Block Wizard. Now we're going to do Fill Quilt Block Outline Inner Shape. So we're going to have a shape on the inside that's not quilted and the outside. So we're going to hit Next. We're going to leave everything the same. Next. I'm going to choose that moon again. I'm going to change the size to 150. Say Next. Okay, so there's my shape when using stippling. Not very attractive. the diamond. Let's try the echo again. Options. Nope, still can't access those. Not quite figured that out. That's kind of cool. I kind of like that. That's kind of really neat. Let's try. Let's do the gap as 7. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that. I was going to do stars, but I actually think that's really cute. So we're going to leave that as is, and we're going to say finish. And there's our quilt block again. This time we have that moon. We could actually come in here and say paste. And now we have that moon inside of there quilted with the outside quilting. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and delete all this. And go back to create. We're at quilt block. All right, fill quilt block with no shape at all. So this is just solid, as you can figure. Next. And then you just get a solid box. Let's see this echo now. Still don't get any of those options. And no change. Weird. But again, you can choose whatever you want. You could do the shape. The shape's kind of cool. There's some, you can make it to use like rays or something, you know, you could kind of, and you can use a motif. You get to do it in here as well. I'm going to change the density to 40 and say okay. And that changes it. So that's kind of cool. And then when you were done, you would say finish, and there it is on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Go back to quilt block. Okay, our last one, outline quilt block with no inner shape. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. Now, I use this a lot in doing things like tile projects where I digitize a design and I break it up so that you stitch them out in like 150 by 150 blocks or 200 by 200, or I use it to do like a quilt block in the hoop. So I'm piecing a hoop, piecing a quilt block in the hoop. I'll use this because it gives me exactly the size I need. So I can say I need a 200 by 200 square, and it's going to spit out a 200 by 200 square. But you can also use it to build other things. So we could come in here and let's choose a diamond. And I'm going to make, we are going to do the length and width. So the width, which is going to be, no, length, which is going to be A, I'm going to change to 150. Okay, so there's my diamond. Okay, so all this does, this is it. You don't get to fill it with anything. It is just the outline. And I'm going to say finish. Okay, so now I have a perfect diamond on my screen. Yay! Okay, so what can you do with this diamond? Well, you could actually make your own applique or your own freestanding applique. So what you would do is you would do this, and you would change the color straight up. Maybe. There we go. We'll change it to green and say okay. All right. Then we're going to go home, and I'm going to copy and paste it. So your first one, and we're going to change the color. Hold on. Yellow. Okay. So the first one would be your placement stitch. So you would put your stabilizer in your hoop, you would put your hoop on your machine, and you would stitch color 1. And that's going to put a placement stitch. Color 2, so color 1 would stop. That's why there's different color. Color 2 would be next. You place your fabric over stitch 1, then you would stitch color 2. And that's going to tack down your fabric so that you can trim around it. Now, the one thing about this is you don't get to choose a double stitch here. I'm going to show you how, but right here you can't do that. Okay, so then the next step to your applique would be adding something to it if you didn't want the diamond. So I'm going to go with this little tree, and I'm going to make it 100. Let's see if that's going to be too big, and apply. Ooh, way too big. So because this is a super design, I can reshape it so that I don't have to actually worry about the stitch count. So we'll shrink it down. And so here's our cute little tree. Okay. So we have our placement stitch, our tack down stitch, our actual embroidery. So our next step would be putting that satin stitch around it. You can't really put a satin stitch around it in the embroidery module. However, you can in Modify. So, or I think it's called Stitch Editor now. Yeah, Stitch Editor now. They change it all the time. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to click on step 1. I'm going to hold down my control key on my keyboard and I'm going to click step 2. And I'm going to choose Combine Selected. Okay, that merged step 1 and step 2 together, which is fine because they're different colors, so they're not going to color sort or anything. They're still going to act just like they're supposed to. Color 2, remember, is our tack down. We don't really care about the tree right now because it doesn't really have anything to do with what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to do Edit in Stitch Editor. Once it opens, it's going to put in those to that diamond. Okay, so this is where we can add that satin line. So we can go to Border. We can do Border Embroidery. And notice how it does the outside and the inside. But we're going to change that margin to 0. And we are going to create Overlay Border. That... Why do I have 2 blues? We'll find that out in a minute. Okay, so that's going to give me my satin stitch. So now I have that satin stitch I wanted. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to uncheck 1, 2, because those are the 2 colors behind it, 3, and 4. What is 3? Oh, it created 2. We only need 1. I think number 3 looked better. We'll do 4. Okay, so we're going to uncheck 4. We're going to select all visible, and we're going to delete that extra one off. Possibly. Okay, we'll try deleting it. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to put them back. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we want to change step 2 to a double stitch, and that is going to be on Object. And we're going to select our object. Okay, so my object is selected. You can see it by the points. And then I'm going to choose this running stitch. Properties. It won't let me change it. Yes, it does. Why won't it let me change it? Convert. Aha! Okay, my bad, sorry guys. Okay, so we're going to click on Convert, and we're going to convert the running stitch to a double stitch. We're going to leave the length at 2.0 and say OK. All right, so now we did it. What we've done now is we have, let's check these. Color 1 is our placement stitch. Color 2 is now our double stitch so that we can cut our fabric, and it's our tack down. And stitch 3 is our finishing stitch for our satin line. So we can go ahead and close this out. Okay, and here it is. We have our cute little applique, but hold on, we still have one issue. So as it stands, it's going to do step 1, 2, and 3, and then it's going to do the tree. But we don't want that. We want to be able to, how do I say this, add a back to it. So the back won't show the tree because this is going to be a freestanding type thing. So what we want to do is add that backing. So we're going to come and select that one, and we're going to say, go to our Modify tab. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to box select step 2. So I uncheck color 1 and I uncheck color 3. I box selected color 2, and I'm going to say copy. That's going to put that stitch in the clipboard. Now, if I were to paste it right here, right now, it's going to combine it with the other one. I don't want that. I want it to stay separate. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to choose Paste. Now notice that that put that down below. Okay, so we're almost correct, okay? So now we have the entire applique, the tree that goes on the applique, And then we have our back adding stitch, but they're not in the right order. So what we want to do now is we want to combine them all. Okay, so this is an intro to digitizing and how things work. So I hope you're hanging in there. Okay, so once they're all combined, notice that that yellow stitch is on top of the blue, even though it's pretty, that's not what we want. So we're going to go to modify. All right, so the order that we truly want them in is color 1 is our placement stitch. Color 2 is our top fabric tack down stitch. We want to do that. Color 4 is our tree. So 4 really needs to come after step 2. So I'm going to click on color 4 and I'm going to move it up 1. Okay. Step 4 is that satin stitch, but we need to put our back on before we put the satin stitch on. So we're going to click on step 5 and move it up. Okay, so here we go. This is how this works. This is the rundown. So if we were going to stitch this out, we would hoop our stabilizer. We would stitch color 1 directly onto our stabilizer. We would then, when color 1 finished, we would place our top fabric over the placement stitch and we would stitch color 2. When color 2 stopped, we would trim along the edge close to the stitch line so that it's nice and flush. We would then stitch color 3, which is our design. Once the design is stitched, we're going to take the hoop off the machine, and underneath of it, we are going to put our back fabric face up on the back of the hoop and tape it in place. We're going to put it back on the machine and we're going to stitch color 4. That is going to tack down that back fabric. We're then going to remove our hoop and trim it all up. We're going to replace our hoop and we're going to stitch color 5, which is that satin stitching. So, crazy as it is, you have used Quilt Block Wizard and some other fun tools, Stitch Editor, to create a freestanding applique. I wasn't really going to do this in today's lesson, but to give you the whole scope of what it can do, I did want to show you that and give you just a little bit of something that, hey, I can do this. I can use this software to actually make something. You could use this to make coasters. You know, you could use it to do all kinds of things. Do a banner. A very simple way to do something. Add some buttonholes and you can put it on a string and create a banner. Just using your embroidery module, using things that are already available to you. You don't have to add a back to something like this, but I always do just because it makes it look cleaner and nicer. Nobody's really going to be looking at it, but you never know. Okay, guys, so that is it. I hope you kept up, and if you didn't, that's what pause is for. I know I kind of go off, but sometimes it's, you know, you get going on these things and there's so much to do in this software that a lot of times I'll think of something while I'm going and create it for you guys. Okay, so lesson 10 is coming up next and I will try to make it on Thursday, I promise. Okay, family tree. I will go over family tree and project in the hoop. These are both pretty self-explanatory and there's not much you can do with them other than what they're designed for. All these other ones, you can kind of do things with them outside of what they're meant for. You can use the shapes and word sculpt to make an applique. You can do a lot of different things with these. And that's one of the fun things about the software. And as we go on, you'll see that in digitizing, I incorporate all these things. I've made an actual zipper pouch using just the embroidery module. I didn't even open digitizing. So people who had back in the day, the extra version, or in today's software, the gold version, you could actually do some digitizing. So I like to show those things. You know, this software can do so much. And there's so many videos out there that you can watch. And I say watch them all. I mean, everybody has such great ideas. And somebody who does one thing one way and somebody does it another way. And you're like, you know what? I like doing it that way better. And that's perfectly fine. I tell my people in class all the time. I have this one lady who comes and she's like, well, can't you do this? Yes, yes, you can. Thank you for pointing that out. There's so many different ways to do some of the same things. And when we get into digitizing, you'll really, really see that. But first, we have to get there. So next week is going to be family tree and project in the hoop. If I feel really motivated, I might do it either Sunday or Monday and then do another one on Friday. We'll see, because we're getting so close to digitizing and I love digitizing. So cross stitcher will be lesson 11. I just did a picture or did a project with a tile that used cross stitcher, and that is my software lesson for May in person. So cross stitcher is one of my favorite things. I think it's fun. And we'll also do sketch. Sketch is pretty quick and easy. So I'll probably mingle that with cross stitcher. So I'll probably do both of those, or maybe I'll do family tree, project in the hoop, and sketch. Maybe that's what I'll do, because we really want to get to digitizing. Now, once we hit digitizing, the first one, so a lesson 11 or 12, depending, 12 or 13, depending. One of those. When we get to digitizing, the first digitizing we will do will be an intro to digitizing. So we'll just kind of go over that module. After that, it'll be digitizing 1, digitizing 2, digitizing 3. And you'll notice that we will come back to this module time and time again and incorporate digitizing with this module, this actual embroidery module. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and give me a like. Do subscribe to catch up on every video that I have, and I hopefully will see you next week. Have a good night.